Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today was born in Glendale, California, and attended Cal State Northridge. He's an actor, choreographer, martial arts expert, and weapons expert. On television, you may have seen him in shows like the original Battlestar Galactica, The A-Team, The Master, Dukes of Hazzard, my all-time favorite, Macgyver, Renegade, Star Trek Voyager, Grimm, NCIS, and Mythbusters. And his fight scene from the show Highlander is considered by many fans of the show to be one of the best in the show's run. On the big screen, you've seen him in shows like Masters of the Universe, Roadhouse, Batman Returns, Fearless, and many, many more. His martial arts and weapons expertise make him a sought-after instructor and choreographer. He's a sword master, whip master, horse specialist, and bladed weapons throwing specialist. He's world-renowned with the bullwhip and has instructed such notables as Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford. Please welcome my guest today, Black Belt Hall of Fame member, Mr. Anthony DeLongis. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you. You make me feel old. Well, I will tell you, next April will mark my 50th year as a working professional.
That's awesome.
I start counting when I started getting paid, which was in 1973.
Okay. At
the Old Globe Theater in San Diego. So, yeah, it'll be 50 years. I've been studying weapons longer than that. But
that's awesome.
I guess we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, how we like to start the show, I want to go back to the very beginning. I want to know where that first interest, that first spark about martial arts came from and kind of what started your martial arts journey.
Well, I had an injury. Actually, when I was in high school, I was not very, very athletic at all. The one thing that kind of broke through for me was they were doing a play called Tea House of the August Moon. And there were a lot of characters in it. And I thought, oh, well, I can go be a villager or whatever, and I read for it and I ended up getting the lead. And that changed my life. It was my first, the bite of the apple. And, it's, I've been addicted ever since. I love acting. I love the work. I love the challenge. It always demands your very best. It always has been and always is. Both the easiest thing I've ever done and the hardest thing I've ever done. Because I'm always trying to get better. Now, when I got to my senior year, I started changing my body because I wasn't very athletic, and I thought, well, shoot, this is the instrument that I'm going to use to tell my story. I need to have more options. So I went out for wrestling, and I started lifting weights and all this other stuff, and I didn't. I wasn't particularly good, but I'd gotten very strong. I kind of wish I knew then what I know now. Mm-hmm. That's true of a lot. And boy, I could grab you and I could hang on, and that helped a lot. So when I got to college, I grew up in London, Ontario. I was born here, but family moved up there, and I went all the way through public and high school, and then I did very well in my ACTs, and I applied to both UCLA and Northridge. I was accepted at both. I opted for the smaller school because I thought, the big school, I might be a little bit intimidated. Oddly enough, I ended up teaching in the theater arts department from 74 to 93. Oh, wow. I taught stage combat and character movement and, basically fight skills. So I went out for a wrestling practice, and some guy pinned my foot and then body slammed me and dislocated my hip. Wow. I was told, I heard a scream and realized it was me. But I was told you'll always walk with a limp. You'll be a cripple, blah, blah, this and that. You'll be on crutches for 3 months. I was 17, 18 at the time. So I kind of went, the doctor, I said to the doctors, you don't tell me, I tell you. Yep. And it's something that sort of held me in good stead ever since. But, I lasted about 3 days on the crutches, and then I ended up going out for my dreams of wrestling and gymnastics, where although there aren't a lot of 6'1" gymnasts, but I didn't
Not
know
really, no.
So I went out for fencing, and I found that I liked it.
Oh.
And I had a Polly. Trying to think of her name. It'll come to me in a minute. She was a wonderful teacher, and she said, I liked it. She said, come out for the team. I went out for the team, and then I started fencing my senior year in college. I was Western Intercollegiate Saber champion.
Wow.
And that was my first martial art, and I started studying with Maestro Ralph Faulkner, who ran Falcon Studios. He was a 2-time Olympian. My coach introduced me to him. Margaret Bauer was her name.
Okay.
But Maestro Ralph Faulkner was a 2-time Olympian, and he was Sword Master to the Stars back in the golden age of Hollywood. He did the original Prisoner of Zenda and, a long list of things, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. One of the things he's best known for is the court jester, the vessel with the pestle and the pellet with the poison and all of that. So he was the first great teacher in my life. And then at 73, I read for the company down at San Diego at the Old Globe and went down there. And I was in the journeyman program, but part opened up in the third play because it's done in repertory. You rehearse 2, open 2, rehearse the third, open all 3, run in repertory, which there is no better training than that. But I started choreographing down there. I started doing the outdoor green show and this and that. And a part opened up in King Lear, and I ended up playing Edgar in King Lear. And Richard Chamberlain came down from the people from the Amundsen Theater, which was, the biggest theater in LA at the time. And back when they used to mount productions instead of just import them. And they had me come up and read for the Vicomte de Valvert, who's the one who, fights it's the duel in rhyme. It basically sets the stage. If this doesn't work, none of the rest of the play does. So I was offered either I could come up to and do Cyrano at the Amundsen and get my equity card, or I was offered a full scholarship at ACT in San Francisco, and I opted for the actor's equity card.
Okay.
But it opened up to where the guy who was supposed to do the choreography, his name was George Gonchev, he had been a coach for the British fencing team.
Oh, wow.
And he had a problem, and I got to do the choreography. It was my first big piece of choreography, and something I'm still very, very proud of. But I played the Vicomte de Valvert. I did the choreography, so I came back the next year in 74 at the Old Globe, and I was part of the equity company, and then I was choreographing. We did Romeo and Juliet, and I played Tybalt, and I did the choreography, and then that started my doing a lot of choreography for the Old Globe up until 1984 when we did the 50th anniversary of Rashomon, which started as a play, at least on Broadway, and I played the samurai husband, and I did all the choreography, and it was, again, I'm always trying to do more and see how I can push the envelope. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's basically what's really the truth. And there's 4 different stories. And the first one is the bandit, and he talks about, this mighty battle between, these godlike warriors that he triumphed and this and that. So that's the fight I choreographed. And then at the end, there's a guy who says they didn't want to fight. The wife shamed him into it, and they were terrible. And so I did exactly the same fight, except nothing worked. And, everything, and it became a farce, really. And so it was some of my best work. I really enjoyed it. And David Carradine, who I had worked with in Circle of Iron, he came down to see it, and there weren't any seats. It was sold out by that point. And he was in the lighting booth, and when the play was over, he was apparently hammering on the glass and cheering.
Oh, wow.
And my friend Patrick Culleton had come. So that was pretty cool. There is a parallel with all of this, which we will get into.
Okay.
But so it started with performance, but as I was doing it, it became a parallel career for me, in front of the camera and on stage. I was doing verbal dialogue, and then, behind the camera or in roles that I was performing, like Macgyver was one of my favorite roles. It was episode 22, the end of the first season. I was Pietro the Assassin. That was back when I could actually pin myself against the rafters, in a closet like a ninja.
I remember that episode.
I was a little slimmer then and a little younger, a lot younger, a little stronger. But yeah, and I got to do, I had fake scars. And, I went, well, I'm an actor, so I'm going to do a bunch of different, accents. I was a master of disguise. And then we have a big fight at the end, where I'm disguised as a nun, and then I whip off that nasty habit. And, I was the kicking nun. I used to joke about that. But that was fun. Funny thing was, a month and a half ago, the coordinator on that, his name's Vince Dedrick Jr.
Mm-hmm.
His father was very big in the business, and now Vince has been very big in the business for a long time. One of his first big parts was doubling Michael Douglas in Romancing the Stone.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And that whole slide down the thing and ending
Yep.
up in her lap and, all of that. But, that was the first time we worked together was on Macgyver.
Oh, wow.
And then a couple of years ago, I did a fencing sequence for them for iCarly.
Mm-hmm.
And then he called me up a couple months ago and said, can you throw axes? And well, actually, I heard he was looking for an axe thrower. And I said, Vince, I just threw knives for, this coordinator and that, and blah, blah, blah. And I ran down about 6 different. I like to be able to train to actually do stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which make easy to film. It also gives you a credibility that you don't get when you do it in cuts and pieces and CGI and all that other stuff. You only have to do it once, but if you see the character actually do it, it makes the audience identify with them and go, well, I could do this too. I could rise to it. But it's a credibility, like Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. She did all her own whip work. None of the professional stunt girls, even Kathy Long, who was 5-time world kickboxing
Mm-hmm.
champion, she got nowhere near Michelle's ability with it, because Michelle saw it was trying to give her another vocabulary to craft her character. And of course, the audience is seeing her, and that combination of allure and danger and, hypnotic. Oh boy, you're so sexy, and oh crap, you'll hurt me. It gave her a credibility that was absolutely priceless. Later on when Halle Berry did it for Catwoman,
Mm-hmm.
alas, they did it CGI. And
you could tell.
I tried to get involved with it. Well, and it became and then it's a video game, and so basically, I started with Maestro Faulkner, and I trained with him for about a dozen years, and then I trained in Taekwondo.
Oh, really?
I made it
Okay.
to red belt level, yeah, and
Okay.
I trained with Master Young Kil Kim. But I felt like I have a whole, if you saw Battlestar Galactica, I've got a jumping sidekick in there. You see Roadhouse, I'm doing some kicking. Although there's a whole other fight while Sam Elliott is fighting
Not Marshall.
Marshall Teague.
Okay.
Yes. Which Marshall's a terrific guy and very,
Yes.
very skilled.
Yep.
But he, while they're fighting, I'm fighting Patrick again, and they want me to do an axe kick at Ben Gazzara is sitting at the bar, and he's got a mug of beer next to him, and the coordinator goes, "Can you do an axe kick and break this mug of beer?" It's a breakaway, but still. And I'm going, well, these pants are awfully tight, but that was back when I could put my knee against my chest and do a variety of kicks. But I always kind of went, I'm about maxed out in how good I'm going to be with these kicks. I need to find some other things. I've got big holes in my hands, and I'm a weapons guy. At that point it was all European weapons. And I heard about Dan Inosanto. So I trained with Guru Dan between 10 to 12 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
And those first 2 great teachers, Maestro Faulkner and Guru Dan Inosanto, gave me the tools to create my whip system, which is very unique. And we can probably go into more detail about that if you want.
Definitely.
But that was what I started with. And then the last 12 years, I've been studying Shinkendo under Kaiso Toshishiro Obata and my sensei, with his Matthew Lynch, who's one of his senior instructors and who's been with him for 23 years. So I have I have a broad, I've studied a lot of different styles
Mm-hmm.
from a lot of countries and a lot of different weapons, and been, I've been, teaching and training for over, for 50 years now. And I find the more I study, the more I learn, and the more each informs what I've already learned. But, there's, I have a structure when I teach. It's basically in every martial art. It's strength through structure rather than effort, which is skeletal alignment, which is essentially your elbows are behind your hands, your body's behind your elbow. And then essentially they have to deal with your entire body all the time. If you're trying to use the strength of your arms, or if you have a bend in your wrist, like you can't punch something with a bent wrist because your structure is flawed. You'll break your wrist. If you want, well, I tell people, look, if you don't move your feet, you're just a stationary target waiting to get run over. The other thing is, if you don't move your feet, you only have the strength in your arms and as much rotation as you can get, from about the waist up. And that's the problem with many martial artists and most performers, both actors and a lot of stunt people too. Your feet unlock your hips and you generate power from your hips. But your foot has to point where you want to go in order to unlock the hip. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Yeah, well, and it's in every martial art I've ever studied.
Right.
But because my job, when I'm working with my students and I, and people come to me with a variety of training, and I love it the more trained they are. But I kind of go, do you want to approach this as a martial artist from, what's combatively viable, or do you want to approach this as a storyteller where we're using the same techniques? It's just we're becoming experts at not hitting things or people. And the parallel is identical, because by not hitting you, it means I can hit you anytime I want to. It's just I have the control. Like when I work with Jet Li, Wu Ping, and flew me over to Shanghai to partner Jet Li in the Tournament of Champions in Fearless. And they were looking for a guy who did both swords and whips. Unfortunately, my name kept coming up. A fellow named Mike Leader was kind of responsible, for finding me and getting me onto the project, which it was a wonderful adventure. But before I came, apparently they'd had some, 5-time boxing champion, something or other. And within the first 2 minutes, he punched Jet Li in the face and broke his nose.
Wow.
So, filming stopped. He had to go away for 3 or 4 days. And then when he came back, within 5 minutes, the guy had punched him in the face again. And of course, he was gone. And it also meant that everybody else, it didn't matter, what you had done and what they thought you could do and this and that, you kind of had to prove it. So, I was in their house and they work the way they work, and I had to fit in, and, I had to rise to the occasion. It was great because Wu Ping and his team would throw together some stuff, and when he and Jet were happy, Jet would get up. He and I would walk it slowly, like, 2 or 3 times, and it's about a 12-move sequence each one, which is a lot because in Hollywood, very few people do more than 3. But coming from a stage background, it's I have no problem with it. Then we walked it a couple times, then we'd shoot it at speed. The first phrase we shot 3 times. After that, we never shot anything more than twice.
Wow.
I caught them up. They were 5 days behind in their filming. I caught them up 3 of those days in 2 half days of filming, so they were very happy with me.
Nice.
But I had to bring my A game. I had to totally commit to where Jet was going to be, and yet at the same time, be in control. So all of the things that I had been training, and, it's where you control distance, you control timing, you control the weapon, you utilize multiple angles and not just linear forward and back. That's what gave me the vocabulary to be able to hang with Jet. And the funny thing was, neither one of us knew the choreography, because we would find something, we'd watch a couple times, we'd shoot it twice, and then we'd do it all over again. We were literally making it up on the spot. And neither one of us knew the choreography, but I would move and Jet would adjust. He would move and I would adjust. And it was our combined 70 plus years at the time of training that allowed us to literally create on the spot. And that's kind of where my parallel between, because everything I teach and everything I do has a combative foundation. Mm-hmm. I'm utilizing techniques that this is how you kill somebody. When I did the Duende episode of Highlander, when we were fighting with Rapier and Dagger in the Rain with Adrian Paul and my friend, Swordmaster Braun McCash, and I put the fight together. And it was again a case of we'd put it together the night before. Adrian, we showed it to him once. We go, we'll rehearse on set in the morning. It was raining, so we had no rehearsal at all. We walked on set and just shot. And it was because of, Adrian's ability and the fact that, he's a trained martial artist, and, he would get, at least one fight every show. And for 22 episodes a season, this was season 5. So there'd been, over 100 hours of television at that point. And then in the off season, he would continue to train. So, he was, it was a lot of fun partnering with him. But I actually introduced a style of fighting that had never been on film before. The Spanish mysterious circle, where it's a 17th century system. The Spanish were kind of virtually unchanged for almost 300 years, where everybody else was leaning towards the Italian, which is very athletic and the powerful lunge, and it's what we think of as modern fencing. The Spanish were much more upright, and this is what I tried to recreate in the Duende episode. The upright, defiant posture of the matador, the staccato foot changes, and the power that comes from torquing the hip and moving offline. So it's constantly changing distance. And the whole idea of the system is you are always within sword's point. If I move 3 to 6 inches and you don't counter, I have a direct line to something vital. It's also made for a whole lot of fun to film because you could get both of us in frame at the same time. So that's, and when I choreograph, what I try to do is I try to, everything you choose tells a story. I say, okay, there's verbal dialogue and then there is action, dialogue. And when you can combine the two in a role, it's extremely powerful. Every time, like if you attack a certain way, here's how I like to work. I'm working with my partner, and Braun McCash loved having me come in. He says, "Oh, this is great. I only have to do half the fight now." Because he would do something and I would counter, and I go, "You want to do A or do you want to do B?" He says, "Oh, let's do B." And then, I would come back with the counter to his counter, and we'd go back and forth, and we would choose, and it would tell a specific story. Because each choice is like a line of dialogue, and each technique, is a sentence that you've constructed in this sort of deadly duel of, what would be words, but is now, bladed weapons or, whatever it happens to be. And so I always try to create the environment for the technique that we've selected to tell the story to be obvious, so the audience can see. They can see the jeopardy as it's developing. One of my pet peeves about most film fights, with rare exceptions, is it's shaky vision and wobble scope, and the camera's way too close. And they have a tendency to edit on the action, which means you don't see the action develop. You don't see the opening, the vulnerability. You don't feel like you're part of the fight. You're just observing it. And it's usually mostly chaos. And I'm just kind of going, that's not the way to invite an audience to be in the fight, which means to be identifying with your character and, wanting to go along for the journey, because there's a narrative and a logic to it. And it drives me crazy because, I'll tell people, the more interesting you are, the fuller the frame they'll shoot you in, the more your body will use because you're using your whole body. Okay. They do, I call it shaky vision, wobble scope, and a lot of tight close-ups to go, oh no, this is, it's all overwhelming and boom, boom, boom. And, it also hides a lot of the fact that not every actor has a lot of ability or has developed those skills. So they think it hides things and they think it pulls you deeper into the fight. And I find it just the opposite. And where it really comes into, where you get punished for it is, where did that weapon come from? Where did that weapon go? Because if they're shooting you from the solar plexus up and your hand drops below that, if you pull something out of your belt, it didn't exist. All of a sudden, there's a weapon there. You're going, where did that come from? And of course, as soon as you go, where did that come from? You're not in the fight anymore. You're not in the story anymore.
Right.
I did all my training when I met Harrison Ford. I'd managed to get my reels to the producers, Crystal Skull. And he called me up, and I get this phone call. He says, hello, is this Anthony DeLongis? I went, yes. Where do I know this voice from? Well, this is Harrison Ford. Well, I guess we better get you in here to brush the dust off. And I'm kind of go, okay. But the first time I met him, he said, I saw your stuff. You're an amazing swordsman. And I said, well, thank you very much. When are we going to do a sword picture? I guess never, but there you go. But yeah, it was pretty cool. But and he was very cool. He worked very, very hard, and I enjoyed working with him. I would have liked to have been throughout, like I was with Michelle. I was there every day, and we would literally create things. I got to get Harrison ready, but they. There's politics in this business.
just a little bit, yeah.
we won't say any more about that. But
nice. So you talked a lot about teaching. When did that become something you were passionate about? You've been teaching for such a long time. Is that something you ever thought you'd do when you were younger, or did you just kind of fall into it?
Teaching is one of the things I'm proudest of, and I was blessed with some great teachers, particularly Maestro Faulkner, and then Guru-Dan Inosanto,
right,
and then now Kaiso Obata and my sensei Matthew Lynch, and I realized the effect they had on me. So it's important to me to be a good teacher.
Okay.
And I tell people, look, if I know something, I will find it, and you want to learn it, I'll find a way to teach it to you. I've got a dozen different ways to say the same thing, and I'll wait for the one that lights the light bulb for you. And what's fun about that is not everybody learns the same way, as you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Almost nobody learns the same way. So I end up teaching. I have material that I have been developing and refining for now 5 decades, but I still teach everybody differently. I'm constantly saying to people, I've been teaching this over 40 years. I've never taught it like this. You teach me how to teach you. And of course, I'm constantly rediscovering the information as my students do. And I'm constantly, my sensei Matthew Lynch refers to it as the onion, because you're always peeling the onion. There's always another layer, and there's always something more. And even though I know this, I've known this for years, and then you suddenly look at this and go, why did it take me so long to appreciate that element too, which makes my understanding that much deeper, and so that's what gets me. That's why I train every day. I'm training in Shinkendo 3 days a week. I'm teaching, usually 2 or 3 days a week with private students. People come from all over the country, all over the world to train with me here at Rancho Andalo. And then if I'm not working with somebody, I'm working on myself. I'm let's just say I'm no spring chicken. I'm a crusty rooster. I'll be 73 in March.
Okay.
And I've worn some parts out. I had a laminectomy on my cervical spine 3-4 years ago, and rehab back from that. I had arthritis in my hips and this and that, and I had one, and that lasted about 1.5 years. And I was doing a picture called Dead for $1. I was doing the whip stuff last September in New Mexico for Walter Hill's new movie, Dead for $1, with Christoph Waltz and Willem Dafoe.
Oh, cool.
And I came in and did some whip action for them in a very short period of time, but it was still fun to do. And my other hip decided I was able to do the job and do it well, but it's just like going, okay, I can work through this. So I was on set and everything worked, but as soon as I stopped working, it seized up again, and I got back, and they went, okay, yeah, you need it. Anyway, the point of this is I've rehabbed myself back from all of those, and I felt like I've been gifted with about, I can ride my horses again without pain, I can teach, I can work. I feel like I've been given back, 10 to 15 years. So I'm taking full advantage of it, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that, I was supposed to be in a neck collar for 6 weeks. And well, unlike when I was 17 and said, you don't tell me, I was going, okay, I'll do that. But after 5 days, I was kind of going crazy. They hadn't given me any physical therapy. And I think they thought they were going to give that after the collar came off. Mm-hmm. And I just started doing all the things I do, but instead of generating power, I utilized it for range of motion. Okay. And I did everything slow motion, which gave me, so I was doing, my body work, my empty hands work, my work with sticks, and then double weapons, and then, staff and things like that. But I was doing it in slow motion. I was doing it with minimal power, but more range of motion. So I sped up my own rehab, and it gave me yet another deeper look into material that, I've been refining for, decades. So basically, I've got a mantra. It's like, if I'm not getting better, I'm just getting older. And there's only, one of those things I can do anything about. So I work every day to get a little better. The other thing about aging is I kind of go, rather than lamenting the things I can't do, because obviously there are the things I can't do. I don't run anymore. I tell people, look, I'm not going to chase you, but if you come over here, I'll show you a couple things that you might find interesting. These days, I'm much more oriented to sensitivity and awareness and refinement, and everything is just more efficient. I don't waste myself in areas that when I was younger and more athletic, hey, this is great to fling myself around. Now it's sort of like, and a few years back, I had one of those sort of obvious epiphanies, but, the road to mastery lies in simplicity. And I tell people, speed doesn't come from working harder. It comes from doing less, so, and you're looking in the night. And this is why I like to teach and choreograph, because I'm there to help somebody, help somebody else be better, help somebody else develop skills, share the knowledge that I've been working with. But it's when you're not having to, when you're not somebody else's punching bag, it's like, yes, we both know that, you are better at this than I am. That's why I'm here. Can you help me get better too? I'll be a better partner for you if you do. Some people have the mentality of, I got to prove to you that I can kick your ass. Okay. Now we know that. Can we get on with it? Or, no. All right. Well, then you can go find somebody else, go punch that wall, as far as I'm concerned. But the idea is, when you're working, that's one of the things I love about Mashu Dojo and Sensei Matthew Lynch and Shinkendo, is we're all there to help each other get better. And in doing that, you improve immeasurably yourself, but you have the luxury of going, I can see how this technique works from long range to medium range to close range. I can see how redirecting that energy, as opposed to absorbing and blocking and absorbing the energy, you get to examine and refine subtleties that you don't get when you're fighting for your life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's not that many's the time I've gone on a set and gone, I'll do dojo energy with you if you want. It makes for a long day. I've been kicked by Joe Louis. He a little something off it. Actually, I was recently kicked by Scott Adkins. He also took a little something off of it.
Nice.
But I'm just like, it's okay. I'll take a little contact. Just put it here. But, never mind. I won't say anything bad about somebody else. There have been places where, as soon as somebody goes, don't worry, I've never hit anybody before. And I'm going, well, then you're due, aren't you? And I'm going to give you one extra step. I got called in to do a little fight scene with, he plays Thanos.
From Goonies.
yes. Yeah, him.
Josh Brolin.
Josh. There we go.
Brolin.
So I came to do a fight with Josh Brolin in Gangster Squad.
Okay.
And we're going to do a fight in a jail cell and this and that. And the coordinator comes over and he says, he likes to work close. And I go, how close? And he threw a punch at me that basically was about 1/4 of an inch away. And I went, okay, good to know. And it's fine, because every time I fight with and I learned this when I was working with Joe Louis, who was very kind to me in that, he didn't actually, there's a great picture. Remind me to tell you a very quick Joe Louis, Mark DeCosco story.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
But they, dynasties. Every time I take a reaction, when I worked with Tom Cruise on Far and Away, and I got cut into the montage sequence about 5 times because my reactions are really good. Every time I take a reaction from somebody, I move my feet. So I stretch the distance so I can see what's coming from farther away. They have to kind of re-enter or close distance. Okay, which is also good because it buys me camera time. It's also good because the audience gets to see the jeopardy, as it's building. Where's the danger coming from and what's going to happen? I'm either going to avoid it, or I'm going to redirect it, or I'm going to get hit. You see, these are all story elements. Every time I take a reaction, I'll buy a little distance, which was great until I ran into the wall of the, we're outside a jail cell, So he's got me up against the wall, and I watch him wind up, and I'm going, oh, shit, and he throws the punch, and he clips me a little bit because I can't go anywhere. And afterwards, he goes, oh, I got you, didn't I? And I was, yeah, but it's okay. I saw you come in. I rolled with it. But normally I would have controlled distance, and even that wouldn't have happened. So it's just the tools that I've been developing not only help me tell a better story, but they also help me be a better martial artist. And they keep reminding me, well, Kaiso Toshishiro Obata, he has, if you wanted to, he's arguably the greatest living samurai swordsman. He created, his system of Shinkendo. He trained with the last 3 surviving samurai masters, after World War II. Extraordinary. And he is a genius. He was 7 times all Japan cutting champion. Again, I've been blessed with another great and inspirational teacher in my life. But if you were to sum up, his swordplay, which is true of everything, but he goes, sword come, you move. Because if you move, you don't have to eat the energy. If you by every time you move, you take power away from your opponent. And, it's what makes things martially viable. It's also what makes for interesting storytelling. So for me, this has been a parallel career. Oh, you asked that question quite a while ago. Why teaching? This became a parallel career in terms of I was always looking for a good acting role. Mm-hmm. I got to play Iago twice. I've had some very nice pieces. I've never had a TV series, which, alas, does not make me a star name. But I'm very proud of the body of work, and I know my best work is yet to come if I can just get the opportunity. But I also, kind of specialize in giving myself more choices when I was playing the role, which happened a little more often when I was younger. I've had the opportunity to play a lot of action roles that were challenging and fun and very rewarding. Right. These days, it's more I'm helping somebody else, actor, coordinator, director, make the most of their character-driven action opportunities. Because if you're not driving story and articulating character, it's just kind of a big sweaty. Let's wave things around a lot, but it doesn't mean very much.
Right.
There's an art to all of this, and that's kind of why they call it a martial art. And I'm part of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and there is an art and a science to every martial art, but also good storytelling. So it became a parallel career for me.
Okay.
And I'm a better performer as a result of it. I'm probably a better person too, I think, because of the teaching.
Nice.
And it means I can continue to improve even if I don't have the athleticism that I once had. I'm smarter and I'm more refined and I'm more sensitive to the energy of a partner, which again makes me a better martial arts partner. It also makes me a more interesting storyteller because I try to utilize these elements, and it keeps me youngish.
How did you find the whip? How did that? I mean, that's something that you're kind of known for. How did you discover that? What made you want to start training with that?
I saw Indiana Jones, and I saw Zorro the Gay Blade.
Okay.
And which was very cool. And I thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I've got to learn how to do this. I got hold of a guy who claimed he had done it. I found out later that he hadn't, but he wanted more money than I could afford at the time. Mm-hmm. But I was looking at this and I went, why are people working so hard? Most people are in the yank and crank school of making a big noise, and which is a very low bar because the whip is the first man-made tool to break the sound barrier. It dates to 3000 BC in both the Chinese and Egyptian cultures that we know of.
Wow.
It's 5,000 years old. One of the things I'm proudest of is I've created something, or maybe rediscovered, who knows, but I don't do it the way everybody else does it because to me, water runs downhill. And when the whip lines up with itself, which here we go, when all of the parts do it was funny because I come from a sword background with, Mr. Faulkner. So I'm looking going, there's 8 angles of attack. There's vertical, downward, upward. There's horizontal, forehand and backhand. There's descending, diagonal, forehand and backhand. And there's ascending, diagonal. Now, you can cut or thrust on you could say there's 360, but we'll say there's 8.
Yeah.
That's true in every bladed weapon system, in every, whether it's sharp or it's percussive or it's you can reverse on the lines, and there's names in every language. I can teach you these techniques in 5 languages. I'm only the
Wow.
martial stuff, but the principles are identical.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, there's footwork. There's forward and back, which is linear, which most people think is European fencing. There's, lateral, which is side to side, get out of the way, profile, redirect, which is very, much aikijitsu and, where you're redirecting the energy. There's descending diagonal, where you essentially create a barrier. Do you do Filipino martial arts?
No, I never have, actually.
Well, they call it male triangle, which is essentially you're standing on a pyramid, and you throw one leg back and face what's coming at you, and or the other way, like 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock. What you're essentially doing is building a wall and getting behind it. That's descending diagonal. And then ascending diagonal is something's coming at you, but rather than staying on center line, you do an ascending diagonal to either 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock and monitor it as it goes by. And you can see how all of this overlays. So there's 8 angles plus circle, because if I shift on the circle and you don't counter, then I have created superior leverage, which was the whole idea of the Spanish mysterious circle system. One of the great things when I was doing Fearless, in between takes, the DP came over and was talking to me. And I gathered this is unusual because Jet Li started taking pictures of us and pointing. He had been a performer. He had been in front of the camera, and he was a Wing Chun man. And he recognized what I was doing with my angulation, because in the mysterious circle, I was doing a lot of off-angle work. Mm-hmm. And he could see my system, and he could see the parallels in his system, and it was just like, well, this is enormously gratifying to have somebody. Oh, and he'd gone behind the camera, and he was a very, I think he was one of the DPs on Crouching Tiger. So, he's top of his game behind the camera, but, he remembers his martial arts background, and he looks at somebody else. And it was a lovely acknowledgement. It was another one of the things with one of the reasons, one of my favorite career highlights working with Wu Ping and Jet Li. The first thing they gave me was they took the sword and they pumped the arm and they went pokey, pokey, pokey. And I went, oh, God, they think European fencing is what they've seen in the movies, which is, I refer to it as a miasma of misinformation. And I just went, I'm not going to do that. So I gave them 3 thrusting attacks, but it was a lunge, a recover forward, offline, and then a redoublement of that, thrusting attack. So it was 3 lunges, but I kept the integrity of the weapon. If you watch that fight at all, you'll notice I am always extended. I'm always behind my weapon. And there are pictures of us that were taken with us at full speed. We never posed for pictures. Any pictures that you see are us in motion, which was really cool.
That's really cool.
But I very quickly realized, they're having me, because they were choreographing my European weapon like it was a Chinese weapon. And I'm going, it's not, but okay, I'm not. That's not a deal breaker. Mm-hmm. I will just take, and that's why I'm here. I understand this. But I realized they were having me attack quadrants, inside, outside, high, low, whatever it happened to be, with whatever the attack happened to be, so that Jet could, do things that he's done literally thousands of times. Basically, I was spurring, you could say, cataforms.
Okay.
Okay. Just visualize that. So, you're having me attack quadrants. Okay. I'll do that, but, after we'd done a couple phrases, would you mind if I'll give you the same attack to the same place. Would you mind if I got there this way or that way? And apparently one of the team, it was reported to me later, said, who's choreographing this, us or the Guaylo? And Wu Ping said, this Guaylo knows what he's doing.
Wow.
So after that, we never had any trouble. And it was, Jet, because they were 5 days behind, we came in and we just, hit the ground running, literally. And, I said to Jet, I missed working with the team because, and they've been together for decades. Again, I had to fit into their house, but I said to Jet, okay, I'm going to target you here, here, and here, just so you know. And he goes, oh, well, you're very skilled. That's why you're here. And you're concerned with my safety, yes? And I said, yes, I am. And he laughed, went, me too. And, and we got along great after that. But there were times where I had to totally commit to where he was going to be, but I never actually released my fingers until I knew he was there. Which comes down to training.
Yeah.
Many people will throw the weapon. What I'm doing is I am throwing the body, and I'm doing exactly what I would do to generate tremendous power and deadly accuracy, but I never allow it to release into the weapon. Does that make sense? That is always control.
Yeah, perfect sense.
And that comes from, it's also like when you're training somebody, with a martial art, again, they're not there to be your punching bag, and when I'm taking my martial arts into storytelling, I tell people, look, we're not wearing protective equipment. Our only safety is our control and our awareness, and the fact that the two of us are in perfect sync, and they're the martial parallels. So my martial arts have made me a better performer, and my performance experience and teaching experience and choreographic experience has made me a better martial artist.
That's cool.
Oh, well, you asked about the whip. Oh, and I forgot.
Yeah.
So just to finish the idea about the whip,
Okay.
what other people were doing didn't make sense to me. So I said, well, when the whip lines up with itself, it forms a loop. But most people, if you hold the handle up, it loops down and forward. Does that mean? Can you visualize that?
I think so, yeah.
It's essentially like a U, okay? Yep. And the whip is in front of your hand and handle. And, when you throw it, you don't get much. If you get a loop at all, you don't get much. What you're doing is you're throwing the tip. Okay. And you're essentially pushing energy through the whip, and then the fact that the whip is a continuous taper means it accelerates until it breaks the sound barrier. The tip of the whip goes 768 miles per hour.
Wow.
Speed of sound's about 1088 feet per second. The tip of the whip will do up to 1,400 feet per second. Well, 45 is only 900 feet per second. Mm-hmm. So it is, obviously, it's literally supersonic. And that is a lot of power. It'll cut you like a knife because of the velocity. So that's a lot of responsibility. Most people throw the whip out and then yank it backwards, which means they're pulling all of that energy back to themselves, and that's why most people hit themselves. Okay, first off, we don't do that. But the other thing I was just kind of going, and if I yank it back, that's your chance to come and get me. And I'm going, well, I would never have my sword behind me. So I looked at this as a flexible bladed weapon. To me, mastering the bullwhip is, mastering a supersonic flexible weapon. And I am always behind my elbow, and my hand is, the angle of my hand sets the angle of the tool, whether it be, a rigid tool like a sword or a stick, or a flexible tool like a whip. And what I do is I pick the whip up and I turn my hand over. Now the loop is on top of my hand, and the whip is behind my hand. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So what I do is I roll and stab. If you look at any of my stuff on the internet, you can see that. And if you look at Michelle, I actually kind of refined this. I was exploring it at the time, and I refined it for her. And then I've been building on it and refining it. But my system rolls and stabs, which is more efficient, more pleasingly aesthetic, if you will. Mm-hmm. Look at Michelle. The accuracy is, if you look on my Whipmaster reel online, it's on YouTube. Yep. You'll see me cut the wick out from under a candle flame.
I saw that. That was cool.
It was, and I didn't even want to do the shot. I said, I live outdoors. I never practiced this. But, that's the accuracy I can have. I can take a target out of your hand as we pass at full gallop in opposite directions, on horseback.
Wow.
And that's why you train to do that. And the trust that you develop with your horse, to let you do that is no small thing. We'll get back to that. Mm-hmm. But so I come from a sword background, and then my work with Guradan and the footwork that I used to struggle with, the whip made me realize, oh, he's trying to get me to line my whole body up so that I do the same thing at the same time with all of the parts. So the whip was enormously helpful. I created my own system. And with mine, I roll and stab. which makes it more efficient, more accurate, more effortless. It also means I'm always throwing the whip last rather than the tip first, which builds in an automatic safety factor that no one knows about except, people that I've trained.
Okay.
So that's very useful when you're working with a human partner.
Yeah.
Because it's all well and good to stand out of range and make a big noise, but I'm either in range, I'm just out of range so that I just miss you, or I'm in range so that I hit whatever I want to hit. Theatrically, I'm, taking the gun out of your hand or the knife or whatever. Combatively, I'm hitting you in the hand. I did a thing for Mythbusters.
Yep.
And they said, what
That was
really
awesome.
works on that? And I said, well, put on the welder's glove. You tell me. And it was, yep, yeah, I'd let that go. But no, my wife got hit once in a show, not by me. My partner, the horse shied away from a buffalo that was at the end of the arena. And when my partner came down, he opened my wife's hand to the bone, to the tendon. She finished the show. We went on to finish the whips, and then we went into lances, then we had a sword fight, and then she and I did a synchronized bullwhip tango. We're taking a bow, and I said, well, that went really well. And he says, I have to go see the men. I go, what? And she showed me her hand, and I'm looking at the tendon and the bone in her hand.
Wow.
And, oh yeah. So, that'll pop an eyeball just fine. And that's the thing. I have a tool that goes over 700 miles an hour, which means I don't have to. If you cover up, I'll just hit you somewhere else. And then I just did a collaboration with Grandmaster Ron Liu, who's the keeper of the flame for Cacoy Cañete and Doce Pares, where he lives at close range. I like long range. That's why I like weapons. It's like, you want me, you got to get through this sword. You want me, you got to close the 10 feet of whip and 3 foot of arm. So, in order to get to me. And if you think you're going to eat the pain and then I'll be waiting for you, because by the time you close distance, I will have reversed the whip. Now I have a baton. So all of my collie comes into handy. I can release that a little bit. Now it's a nunchuck, or a flail or a rope dart or anything you've studied has very, very eloquent voice in the whip. But I've spent 40 years now, refining this. And but with Ron, we did an investigation of combative bullwhip at multiple ranges, because I've always been having to take care of my partner. But in this, I had one of my students, and we dressed him up, and we got to beat the hell out of him gently. But it was just like, it was, I always had these. I knew that, okay, instinctively I have these options. But with Ron, I got to learn some of his, Doce Pares and Cacoy Cañete's techniques to supplement what I had already envisioned. And then he got to, he doesn't have my long range, but my medium range is his long range. And then our checking hand range, envelopment range, and submission range, they overlap. So it was a real meeting of the minds. We're my friend Dan Trout he filmed it and he's editing it right now. So I'll have something new to come out on that. I have a lot of instructional DVDs.
Cool.
Ray for the stage and screen, Broadsword for the stage and screen, several on bullwhip. My legacy that I decided to do about 4 years ago was Mastering the Bullwhip Volume 3 and 4,
okay,
which is essentially a step-by-step progression to train yourself to confident professional level excellence, with the whip.
Cool.
By the way, all of this, www.delongis.com, DELONGIS.com.
Cool.
You can also see where to come to train at the Rancho Indalo, because I enjoy teaching. So we sort of welcome people who want to have an adventure and come and train with us at the ranch.
That'd be fun. I'll have to maybe talk my wife into that.
We do a couples. Actually, we had a couple honeymoon here once, which was fun.
Wow.
It's just like, okay, that's an adventure. But we do. You can come for intensive training, or you can come just to. I've always wanted to try this, and know that I'll keep you safe and you can investigate stuff. Or your wife can sit in the spa and and watch you train, or you can sit in the spa and watch her train. It doesn't really matter. My wife, Dr. Mary, has her PhD in cellular biology and anatomy. She also trains with me in Shinkendo all the time. She's a black belt as well.
Nice.
She's the brains of the outfit. I'm the circus she ran off to join. She now does all these things, and she's good. And I'll hold targets for her. That's how good she is. So
nice. I want to get to one thing now. Before we started recording, you made a comment that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to make sure I brought it up. We talked about horses, and just talk about the connection between horses and martial arts. I thought that was really interesting when you brought that up.
Okay. Oh, to finish the thing about the so I have with the whip, I want a supersonic ally. With a horse, I have an 1,100-pound adversary, or I can have an ally. I want an ally.
Okay.
I have to earn his trust for him to let me make the decisions, because he's always going to be a better horse than I will.
Right.
But I do, after I didn't start till I was 39, and my friend Colin Dangard of the Australian Stock Saddle Company, he was supplying me with whips when I was working with Michelle, and afterwards I went out and took a ride and said I'd love some lessons, and he wasn't terribly interested. I said, I'll teach you how to fight with sabers on horseback, and his eyes got real big, and so I started riding his horses and made that commitment, and he made my dream possible. And then we performed for 10 years, with bullwhips and lances and sabers on horseback. And I learned a lot. And then I was able to, I've created roles in action in 13 countries on 5 continents.
Wow.
11 of them on horseback. And everywhere I've gone, I've been able to make the horse an ally. Okay. Which, has given me credibility in my performance. And of course, it's given me adventures I would never have had. So perhaps the moral of the story is dreams do come true. You just don't give up, and they'll seldom come true on your timetable.
Yeah.
But if you stick it out, you'll experience some wonderful things. I've ridden on both capes, both Cape of Good Hope and Cape Horn. When I was at Cape Horn, looking down at the Straits of Magellan, I'm kind of going, who would have thought in 6th grade geography that I'd go, I'm on horseback, Cape of Good Hope, at Cape Horn.
That's awesome.
One last thing on this where the parallels come in. Mm-hmm. I remind people, no matter what your tool is, because of course, all weapons are tools.
Right.
And every one of them is inanimate. It is an inanimate object until you pick it up. And then it's an extension of your will and your skill and your training. So each weapon affords you assets, and each weapon does what it does better than anything else. Each weapon has its strengths, and each weapon has its vulnerabilities, which is, of course, what makes for interesting choreography, I think. But you have to make that tool an asset. It's not the tool. The tool will always want all of your attention all of the time. You can't do that. It has to be an extension of you in order to maximize its effectiveness. And then each tool, as I said, it has its strengths and its vulnerabilities, which is what makes it interesting to study. It's been fascinating me for 50 years. Same thing with horses. You have to turn this 1,100-pound beast with a mind of its own into an ally by winning their trust. And the first thing is you balancing yourself. Mm-hmm. And I didn't figure this out, for quite some time. But finally, with all of the other things that I'm doing, I kind of went, what a horse stance is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's a reason they call it a horse stance.
Yep.
Because it's like you're on a horse. Okay. If you're in a horse stance, it doesn't matter whether it's Chinese or, Japanese or you're in a horse stance, basically, right? If your chest gets in front of your knees, you're off balance. Right? That's how I flip you. If your shoulders get behind your heels, you're off balance. That's how, I can manipulate you and throw you around and flip you or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Obvious, right?
Yep.
If you can't be in balance on your feet, standing, you can't be in balance standing unless your feet are under you, okay?
Right.
What makes people think that they can be in balance on horseback if their feet are not?
Yeah.
And almost everybody rides a horse like they are on a motorcycle, and they're touring and they're back. And that is a style of riding. It's a Western. There's a Western style, and it's a working thing where I'm on horseback all day. And, and so you can, it's just harder to get into the rhythm of the horse. When I'm on horseback, I'm trying to do precision weapons work on horseback, which means my legs become my shock absorbers. That means my hand is still and I can do precision things with swords and whips and lances. And I've shot live ammo. I did a Lock and Load with Gunny Lee Ermey, where I was shooting a single action 45 caliber pistol from the back of a galloping horse that I had met the day before.
Wow.
And basically, if you're in balance, and there's yet another parallel, but to be in balance, you have to be in balance on your feet before you can be in balance on a horse. The two of you have to become one. You have to balance yourself, because if you're balanced, you can help the horse balance, and he feels that. If you're out of balance, you can unbalance the horse. Horses stumble all the time, but if you don't make it worse, they recover within a step, just like we do. If you've got some nasty kid on your shoulders pulling your head backwards or forwards, I say, riding a horse is a little bit like having your nephew sitting on your shoulders. If they're sitting on your shoulders straight up and down, it's pretty easy. If they're not straight up and down, it's pretty freaking miserable. Well, welcome to the life of the horse, so I enjoy it very much. And I'm just so grateful that, my replacement parts have allowed me to continue to do the things I love to do.
That's awesome. Who are 3 or 4 names you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Well, Maestro Ralph Faulkner, Guru Dan Inosanto, Kaiso Toshishiro Obata.
Nice.
I had the great pleasure to work with Joe Louis, and I really it was quite an adventure. He had come in when I did Circle of Iron. He did some reshoots because they wanted to just add some more action elements for the Cord character. And so we'd done some reshoots back in LA, and he had said, "I'd like to have you. I admire your athleticism." I said, "But I'm just a brown belt." And he said, "Yeah, but you're an athlete, and this and that." And so he was the one who was responsible for my getting to be in Jaguar Lives, which was my first trip to Spain. Oh, I got some stories, but you'll have to buy me a drink. Do that another time when you come to visit, you and your wife.
Definitely.
And he was extremely accomplished. I went back and taught at Karate College a couple of times in Radford, where he and Bill Wallace and Dr. Jerry Beasley, they would host this, so that he's definitely there. I've really only met Bill, through Joe, but Bill is an extraordinary martial artist, of course.
Yes.
I just worked with Scott Adkins, and I, had nothing but, respect for his skills and the things that, he has done on screen. And, in term, do you know who Gene LaBelle is?
Oh, yeah, Judo Gene LaBelle. I met him one time in 1995. Yep.
Well, Gene was one of my whip students.
Wow.
He was one of the ones responsible for getting me in the Black Belt Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And when the cover came out, he was, of course, on the cover of the magazine, and I got a call from him that day, and he says, "You're my hero," and I'm kind of going, "Thanks, Gene. That's really nice." But we went to his memorial, if you will, or his celebration of life. And one of the things I used to love about Gene was he would go, "Don't worry, this isn't going to hurt me a bit," and then he'd come up and choke you out or twist you into some god awful. The first time I met Gene, I was guesting on the Hardy Boys.
Oh, wow.
And I was kind of the that's a long
Sean Cassidy and Parker Stevens.
And he was coming in, and I guess he was doubling Parker for a minute. I was teaching this martial arts class, and he came in, and 1 minute I'm shaking his hand, and the next minute he's doing some Japanese move that sounds like you're ordering sushi, and then I was splayed out. I was over his head, and then I was on the floor. I'm reaching up from the floor and going, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. LaBelle, sir." Dan Inosanto used to talk with, great affection and admiration. He says there are 2 people who, do grappling better than anybody else I know. And one was Wally J, and the other was Gene LaBelle. And Gene was always, really wonderful to me. So he's, I'd say he belongs up there.
Definitely.
Jet Li.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wu Ping. Yeah. They deserve more than honorable mention, that's for sure.
That's a great Mount Rushmore. So nice.
Yeah.
And I met Joe Louis once too. I met him at a tournament in Minnesota, and I think 90 or 91. He was there as a guest, and I got a autograph from him back then. I didn't get a picture, unfortunately. So
I've got a picture of him. It was like, oh God, it was, I don't know, 28 years later or something. I was back at Karate College, and my friend Jason McNeil, who writes for a lot of martial arts publications, good scriptwriter too, He had an original poster, and we both signed it. So, and he may have about the only original poster that has both of our signatures, because, of course, Joe passed a couple of years ago.
That's awesome. That'd be something to have.
Yes, I do have a pair of boxing gloves with Joe's signature on it.
Wow.
So save your pennies, or if you want to auction it off.
There you go.
It's expensive to keep horses, so.
All right. So in all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy you've learned that rises to the top? You keep coming back to it. It's super important to you.
Never stop training.
Nice. I like that.
And well, and it's what brings me back to if I'm not getting better, I'm just getting older.
Yeah.
And there's only one of those things I can do anything about. And no matter the age, you can keep getting better, because where you may not be able to do some things, due to, the years and the mileage, you can do other things better than you ever have before, and continue to do, what can I do? So how do I make the most of what I can do, rather than going, oh, well, back in the day, well, that was yesterday. This is the present, and I want to take that present into tomorrow. So
nice.
Yeah. And the activity again has, shaved off a good decade or more. I feel in better shape now than I did 10 years ago.
That's awesome.
And I'm kind of going, well, I guess I better not stop, because it seems to be working.
All right. I got a few fun ones to wrap it up. This one, a favorite martial arts book.
Oh, Guru Inosanto's, it's Guru Inosanto's first book.
Okay.
Yeah, the heck is that?
He's written a few, I know.
The Kaiso Toshiro Shirobata's book on Shinkendo, he actually has 3.
Okay.
Shinkendo, he also has book Tamashigiri, which is
Okay.
cutting. He literally wrote the book about cutting, because he's both, he created, he was the one who started using tatami mats, and high quality tatami mats as as a cutting medium. He not only, most of the time when you're cutting, you're not testing the sword, you're testing the swordsman.
Right.
And whether you are successful or you fail, you look at the target, and the target helps you go, okay, what did I just learn from that? It's not about, I cut it. Oh, good. Well, it's like, did you cut it as well as you could have? Did you do what you mean to do? Did you, were you accurate? Is the angle correct? Was your hasuji, your blade angle, correct throughout? Whatever combination of things you were doing. Kaiso is also, he was one of the few people who would test swords, where sword makers would come to him and say, please break my sword, which basically meant, please test this until it breaks and tell me how I can make it better.
Okay.
And he is one of the few people who has the expertise to go, this is a little too hot, or you did this, or you did that, or this is too brittle, or this is too, flexible. He was 7 times All Japan cutting champion. He also still holds the record for taking a period sword and cutting a period helmet, which is designed for the sword to glance off.
Yeah.
Very few people can do that. And his is, I don't have at my fingertips the depth and length of his cut, but it couldn't be more perfect.
Wow.
But so literally, if you want to know what's suitable to cut and what are, the resistance factors of all of these different materials, and some of them are, you really shouldn't be doing this with a sword.
Mm-hmm.
Not good for the sword and probably darn dangerous, but he's gone through and he's organized it into a book. It's called Tamashigiri by Toshishiro Obata. It also has a series of progressively more difficult cutting combinations.
Okay.
So if you want to take, and most people, unless you're in this particular art, never cut anything resistant. It's yet another element of your training, because you can wave the sword around and, and I admire the athleticism of, in the business, they're called trickers. Mm-hmm. People who are very, well, basically they're gymnasts. And you have a sword in their hand and they wave the sword around. It's not very good sword technique, but it's certainly flashy. And,
cool.
I admire the skill, but you're kind of going, and it's crept into choreography. I was like, for God's sake, stop spinning that thing. And why are you turning? You only get to turn if you've kept somebody busy. But anyway, they're also the stuff they're working with is extremely light. So anyway, it's just there's, again, the athleticism is extraordinary and admirable, but the actual sword technique is Often lacking, let's put it that way. So, but those books immediately come to mind.
Okay.
My friend Nick Evangelista, who was the assistant to Maestro Faulkner, he wrote a book called The Encyclopedia of the Sword, which is very good.
Oh, okay.
My friend Jared Kirby, wrote a book, translated both Angelo and Capoferra, which are Angelo was small sword, Capoferra was rapier,
Okay.
Italian rapier. Those are very good books.
I'll have to check some of those out.
And my friend Tom Meadows wrote the Filipino Fighting Whip, which he and I met in 1985, I think, when we were both studying at Guru Nasantos.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about Tom was, he comes from a more traditional style, and yet he always welcomed my explorations. And he's very complimentary in his book, about what I'm doing. And every few years we would run across each other and we would spend a few minutes, and then we would go away re-inspired by the other, so that we were constantly developing, parallel knowledge, alas, apart more often than I would have liked. But so he is one of the few books, on the Filipino Fighting Whip to exist.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I decided, rather than writing books, I do instructional DVDs, because most people don't have the the attention span to really read a book. And it's also hard to learn something from a book.
Right.
So I wanted to give people visual aids. And one of the things about my instructional DVDs is I keep everything to from 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay.
And I focus specifically on one aspect that becomes the foundation for the next step. Each of my DVDs are progressive individual lessons, each based on what came before, until you have built up a vocabulary to be able to continue to train yourself to, whatever level you want to be at. But I just thought I will reach more people this way.
And I will definitely put links out there for all those too, so people can check those out.
I will have a new website soon.
Okay.
My old website has everything except the Mastering the Bullwhip Volume 3 and 4. And then this new one, I'm going to be doing Bullwhip Combatives at Multiple Ranges. That'll probably be, it'll be out by summertime.
Okay, cool.
But I'm working on my new www.delongis.com.
Okay.
The old one is still up. The new one will be better.
Okay. Cool. Let me know when it's there, and I'll update the link on the thing. So
I appreciate that.
These last couple questions might be kind of hard because you cannot pick something you've worked on or been involved with. So, favorite martial arts TV show?
There was something called The Shadow Warriors years ago with Sonny Chiba.
Oh wow, I forgot about that.
And then there was something called Asurembo Shogun, I think it was,
which
was a totally different style of samurai sword work, but it was, the guy in disguise traveling around, and he had 2 sidekicks. And then, of course, the Shadow Warriors, Sonny Chiba would do bad haiku and then kill somebody at the end, spectacular. But I also admired it for the way the camera coverage was part of the action, and the action dictated how the camera moved as opposed to it being fragmented and all of that. So I quite enjoyed that. Did you ask TV shows?
Yep, TV shows. The next question is favorite martial arts movie.
Oh, one?
Well, if you can pick more than one, if there's one that stands out, but if you have a couple.
If I would have to, my inspiration that continues to inspire me, both as a filmmaker and as a martial artist and as an actor, is Seven Samurai.
Oh,
but
nice.
And I'll tell your listeners, if you ever get the chance to see it in 35 millimeter in a theater, don't miss it.
That'd be cool.
It's a little bit like if you've ever seen Robin Hood in a theater.
Yep.
In 35 millimeter, you won't believe the depth of color and texture in the wardrobe. It's amazing. I'm trying
to get a local theater because this year is the 50th anniversary of Enter the Dragon. I'm trying to get our local theater to do a screening because I've never seen it on the big screen. So
that's a good one.
Fingers crossed.
But I run towards Kurosawa.
Can't go wrong with that.
Tanjiro and Seven Samurai are kind of the holy trinity for me.
Nice.
And of course, I'm a huge fan of Toshiro Mifune.
Good answers there. Okay.
Well, what do you think? Like, he ain't some dilettante.
There you go. All right, this one I'm really curious about with your background. I can't wait to hear what you pick for this one. Favorite, it doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. It can be, it doesn't have to be. Favorite movie fight scene?
Do I get more than one?
Yeah, if you have more than one, go for it.
Well, it's interesting because it doesn't have to be. I'm a big believer. Well, I love practical action. I love seeing something, with a minimum of tricks.
Yep. Actually, what I'd love to hear from you is your favorite movie fight scene, and then your favorite movie sword fight scene. If you want to pick two that way, that'd be kind of cool to hear.
Well, okay. Here's it's not an elaborate fight. But it is one of the things that reminds, again, in my work, and in Japanese swordplay, jitashi zen, which means, self, others, and environment. It's pretty foundational. And one of my favorite early fight scenes is from Russia with Love, with Sean Connery and Robert Shaw, and they're in a train. They're in a train car, and it's like fighting in an elevator.
Yeah.
But, it's a train car, and there's an overhead berth, and there's a thing, and there's that. And, the proximity makes it factors into the story of the fight. It's the third character, and it's very limiting, and you see the point.
Yeah, definitely.
I think of that. One of the most simple fight scenes, what the hell is it? It's a Gary Cooper movie. He's a scientist, and he's going to Italy, where this guy's daughter is supposedly being him. He's having a fight with a mafioso who I think was his name's gonna be Aldo Nadi. Okay. Aldo Nadi was one of the greatest fencers in the world. And apparently he had the ego to go, just ask him, he'll tell you. Supposedly his brother was even better, but Aldo was, and he has a stiletto, and, he's this bad guy. But it's a nice little bit of trivia. It's like, holy shit, that's Aldo Nadi. One of the most famous fencers in the world.
Nice.
Gary Cooper he's a scientist. He's not a superhero. He's not this is actually something Harrison Ford does really well. Is an everyman put in extraordinary circumstances. But he's there, and they're fighting, and the guy has the knife, and Gary Cooper is out of his class, but he gets a finger. And he's spending this time trying to bend this finger back to get the guy to release his hold so that he could, not get stabbed in the neck with this thing. And the tension of it is tremendous. And you're just like going, this is one of the simplest action things I've ever seen, but because of the story and the character works really, really well. In terms of sword fights, you're back to Yojimbo Sanjuro. It's, I think, 29 seconds of absolute stillness and then 2 moves. But you feel very satisfied because you've already known from earlier on, these guys are amazing swordsmen. Mm-hmm. So, that's an extraordinary, piece of theater. The sort of Seven Samurai is, wonderful. Yojimbo is wonderful. I've been inspired and homaged that, opening fight scene many, many times. But in European, one is Rob Roy. It's one of my favorites because a good choreographer, I think that's Bill Hobbs. Either Bill Hobbs or Bob Anderson. I'm not sure at the moment. Okay. But here's the thing. In doing Highlander, I actually did a behind-the-scenes things. My friend Braun McCash, he was often handed the worst piece of crap, by the prop guy, and he had to build a sword fight, with Adrian. And when I did Blackmail in season 3, I did Blackmail in season 3 and then Duende in season 5. Blackmail, I was given this, god-awful sword, and Braun goes, I'm sorry. And I said, it's all right, man, I can make this work. But, and then when we did, Duende, it was the Rapier and Dagger in the Rain, and Tebow's Mysterious Circle, and that was really, really cool. Sorry, you've just taken me down memory lane. I'm trying to go. That's
okay. You're a great storyteller, so I love listening to this.
So I did a behind the scenes thing for for Highlander, where I said, Every immortal has chosen a specific sword. He's either chosen it for themselves because they feel virtually immortal. That me and this sword, nobody can beat us. Or it was chosen for them by their teacher. So, I did a thing with, and Adrian had like 3 because, he had his original, Claymore, and then he had, there was an evil, Highlander at one point, and then his usual katana. So basically what I did was I described the sword and, what its advantages were and what it could do and this and that. And I essentially went with the, conceit that all of these had indeed been chosen because each one does what it does better, and it's an extension of that particular person. So what I love about Rob Roy is Liam Neeson's character is very upright, very direct. He comes at you from the front, and he is using a very traditional Scottish basket-hilted broadsword, and it's a weapon of power. It's very powerful. You can cut people in half with it, which he does at the end. Whereas Tim Roth's character is a rapier. And a rapier is all about deception. And as is Tim Roth. He's a liar. He's a bastard. And he is utilizing a weapon that relies on, I'm not telling the truth. Each attack is, you don't know if it's true or if it's false. So pitting these two characters together, their weapons were an extension of their personalities, which I thought this is excellent storytelling, and this is superior. Well, this is excellent choreography, and this is superior storytelling. So that, and I'm sure when we hang up, I'll think of seven more. Oh, well, frankly, two of my favorite fight scenes are. The Spanish swordsman and, Jet Li and Fearless. Mm-hmm. And I'm rather fond of the rapier and dagger fight in the rain in Highlander in Duende.
Nice. Anything I forgot to mention that you want to make sure we get out there before I let you go?
Just make sure people know that they can come and train with me if they want.
And I will definitely put links for that. And
either you can have an action adventure and train to be your favorite action hero, or you can come and investigate, a variety of different things I specialize in, particularly, my methodology with the whip, and the other things I do with a variety of different martial arts and weapons. So
nice. Well, I'm hoping to get out there because I haven't been to California in almost 10 years to visit friends because I used to live out there, and I'd love to get back. And who knows, maybe someday my son will get to work with you. He's going to school for acting, so maybe he'll get to do a project with you in a few years.
I would like that. Tell him to hire me. I'll help him look great. When you need this veteran actor who happens to come with skills, keep me in mind.
Cool. Well, Anthony, I want to thank you so much. This has been such a blast. Like I said, you're an amazing storyteller. I thought of you. I was actually watching the episode on Macgyver, and I'm like, oh,
it is one of my favorites.
Yeah. I know. And I told you that's my all-time favorite TV show. I never missed an episode when I was in high school. I honestly tell people it's because of Macgyver that I never drank because he didn't drink, he didn't use guns, and it was like I just thought that was the coolest thing. So I got hooked on that show, and I own the whole series on DVD, and I've rewatched it with all my kids, and I love it. So yeah, it's all-time favorite, and it always, and actually our dog that I was talking about before that we had for 16 years, his name was Macgyver. So
that's very cute.
yeah, that's cool. But no, seriously, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you so much. This will be so much fun, and I can't wait to get the episode out there. I'll put links for all your stuff out there, and we'll hopefully send some people.
I will put it up on my social media too when you send me links and stuff.
Yeah, awesome.
I had to laugh. You said, I don't know if we'll be able to, sometimes filling an hour, and I'm kind of going, that's, well,
if everything stays on schedule, I'm about a month ahead. So your episode right now is scheduled to come out February 16th. So in about a month. It'll take me a little time to get it edited. I think I have 8 interviews scheduled in the next 9 days. So
we'll have fun. And I hope, I knew I could promise you, don't worry, there won't be any yes or no answers.
I appreciate that very much. And I haven't had that in a long time. So, but seriously, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you on the show, and I will be in touch soon.
Excellent.
All right. Have a good evening, sir.
Take care and best to the family.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.